Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Shipping Insight 2020, Day 2, 5 workshops. I'm Huge Downs. This afternoon in our first workshop, we're going to be speaking about the S Suite and collaboration. Collaboration has been spoken about a number of times during the past couple of days, and we're going to look at that today. Improving efficiency is about changing human behavior. The S Suite creates unprecedented opportunities for collaboration across and within a shipping organization. Collaboration which will improve efficiency even more. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present Tobias Croger, StormGeo, sorry.
Yeah, wonderful. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening from my side. My name is Tobias. I'm together with my colleague John, and we are happy and delighted to actually introduce you to our newly launched S Suite. Now, what does S Suite stand for? What does the S stand for? What does the Suite stand for? Well, there are many abbreviations, many guesswork out. Feel free, whatever you like and whatever suits your need best. But John and myself, we would like to run you through today's S Suite, as we have launched this service actually just last week. So the timing from launching the S Suite together with the Shipping Insight is actually a super fit, and we are happy and to bring that message across to you. As just said by the announcement, what are we aiming for? We are aiming to support a better collaboration and cooperation across and within the shipping industry. So in that context, I will run you through the presentation. John is guiding me and supporting me on that side, but please feel free to ask questions whenever you have, whenever you see the need for. The questions will be collected and moderated so that nothing get left behind. Okay, S Suite, a one-stop solution connecting the shipping industry. As said before, as we learned over the various deep dives and panel sessions last week and the two days of this first 2 days of this week, it's a hot topic. Now we still see that many of the services are disrupted, not disconnected, that there are challenges left and right, and we are aiming with the S Suite to better connect the shipping industry. Okay, next slide, please. Excellent. So what are we aiming for in detail? We will run you through this within the next 30 to 45 minutes. That's the game plan. But before we speak about better cooperation, before we speak about optimizing the workflow, before we speak about what can we do better, become more effective, for sure, we need to understand where are we these days. Next, please. And 2 more next, please. Excellent, thanks. So what we see in the shipping industry these days is actually, well, that first of all, relevant data are scattered. Now, what does it mean? Well, we see data coming in from the vessels in the standard noon report, although, and has been discussed also earlier today and also yesterday, more and more data, more and more ships are being connected by various sensors, by various high-frequency auto-logging system. That itself already creates a complexity because all these information and data streams need to be channeled to show for the relevant people analyzing them. But that's not all. We have maintenance databases, we have engine manufacturer databases, so they are all decentralized, stored. So that means that the potential analytics of those data is and becomes a challenge. As a second element, what we also see these days is that, as mentioned here, various parts of the organization have different agendas. Now, what does it mean? A shipping company typically is diverse. You have a fleet management team, you have a technical team, you have an operations team, etc., and all of them follow a different agenda. Now, that itself creates already another extra layer of complexity, because typically all these different departments, units, they are running their business with different systems. And that ties into the next point. Disconnected processes lead to organizations not capitalizing on potential synergies. Well, I think it's a matter of facts. If you run your company on many different systems with many stakeholders need to have access to different platforms, different softwares, etc., to in the end come to an overall conclusion, I think it's fair to say that this leaves some potential behind. Thank you. Next, please. So as said, before we can speak about what can we optimize, we need to understand what are the challenges these days. Here are some examples listed, like vessels and the shore, as I mentioned before, not viewing the same reality, or vessels detained in port due to non-compliance, which, by the way, is one of the biggest drivers these days. Easy example, if you want to leave the port and your publications are not updated or the charts which you need, they are simply not available. High operational and voyage costs, for sure, that's about, as one example, the fuel efficiency. Data quality issues, I think this is also obvious. What is meant by that? Not able to accurately describe my vessels according to the charter party description. Well, what could be a challenge in that context? Well, typically the charter party is described and written by the operations team. Now, the operations team, they very often do not exactly know about the performance KPIs of a vessel. So is my VLOC now burning 70, 72, 74 tons at 12 knots, at 30 knots? Is my container vessel at 20 knots burning 150 tons or 120 tons? All these can have a major impact later on when it comes to the commercial aspect. But we have seen a number of, in the worst case, claims related to a charter party not accurately described. And last but not least, vessels subject to traffic and weather risk. Well, I think this is also obvious. As the operations and the instructions coming along with that, sending a vessel from port A to port B are very often linked to weather and traffic risks. So mitigating this risk, make sure that the vessel arrives at destination port in a safely and timely manner is critical and of essence. All right, next, please. For sure, we from StormGeo, we cannot tackle all the aspects and all the elements. I think it's fair to say that every company, every service provider, every person, every employee has its strong points and its weak points. And to provide something which is meaningful, one should focus on the strengths he or she or it has. So from that perspective, with the S suite, we would like to tackle pretty much four of these elements. So next, please. So the first element which we like to tackle and address going forward is for sure maximizing voyage performance. I come to this, what it means in a minute. Next, please. Second element is for sure that in addition to maximizing the voyage performance, we would like to support the shipping company to optimize the vessel performance. Now, where's the difference? Again, I will explain this in a minute. Next, please. For sure, it's about ensuring navigational compliance. As said before, make sure that the vessel arrives at the port of destination in a safely manner. And last but not least, next please. Very high on the agenda these days, ensure environmental compliance. We have seen in the last years that the EU has established a CO2 reporting scheme, the EU MRV. IMO has followed 1 year later with the IMO DCS scheme. Just last week, it was announced that the Sea Cargo Charter is offering a voluntary environmental reporting scheme. There are many more out there, Clean Cargo Working Group, ESI, CSI. So all of these elements we try to address from a single platform, and that platform is, next please, the S suite. Now the S suite combines the three elements: the SHIPPINGinsite, which is the performance management part, SRouting, which is the route advisory part, and SPlanner, which is the navigational part, all into one. And how this will look like, I will present you on the next slide. Next, please. And in the middle, click in the middle, please. Excellent. So what is the S-Suite? Next, please. Well, it all starts and ends for sure with the data, and the data come from the vessel on board. Now, decisions are typically not made on board. Decisions are made ashore. So that said, to have a central server, a central platform, a central unit sitting in between who is managing the data coming from the vessel to the shore in a feedback loop will very much help for a better and easier collaboration across departments. Next, please. So let's start where typically a journey starts. It starts on board. Therefore, we have the S-Planner, and the S-Planner will make sure that whether it's about the onboard route optimization, so planning a route from A to B, considering any kind of weather parameters, or whether it's about navigational charts and publications from a centralized server, is fed into the ship's system so that the captain, the second mate, or whomever can run the planning of a voyage from a single source. Next, please. And next. Now, once the voyage is started, for sure, via a reporting tool, the data need to be fed back into the system. Therefore, we have what is named here the SHIPPINGinside log, which will become our electronic logbook, where the crew on board on a day-to-day basis can feed all the relevant information, be it the traditional noon reporting, but it can as well be the garbage information, the ballast water information. Think of what happens on the bridge and in the engine room, all these information then to be shared back into the server. Now, why is it important to have such a feedback loop established? Well, let's assume that if you plan a voyage in advance and you say, well, I'm sailing from Houston to Rotterdam. For that voyage, you need to know the weather criteria. For that voyage, you need to know, okay, what charts are needed, and eventually also what are special publications, books I need to have because I'm entering some waters where I have never sailed before. So that happens typically before the voyage. Now let's assume that during the voyage, in the middle of the Atlantic, the operator comes around the corner and says, dear captain, we have a new destination port for you, and it's not Rotterdam, it's Cape Town. So out of the sudden, the entire voyage pattern changes, which means that also the captain eventually needs to have new charts, needs to have new publication, needs to have new weather files. So that means that a feedback loop back to the vessel is critical to make sure that the captain receives in time all the needed information. Next, please. Going forward, for sure, while the vessel is en route with the information coming in from the vessel, for sure, the vessel needs to be fed with information when it comes to the route advisory services. So there, for sure, also the services can be scaled, but in essence, it aims to first of all bring the vessel in a safely manner to the destination port, while ensuring that the vessel meets certain parameters, criteria, such as meeting the ETA, meeting the ATA at the least time with the least cost, etc., etc. These information then for sure have to be fed back to the vessel. Next, please. And I think the answer is obvious. Why? Because weather changes. So if we leave the port of Houston today, we do not know, and no one can to 100% exactly predict how the weather will be in 10, 12 days. What is, by the way, typical, let's say, lag time from Americas to Europe. So that means on a daily basis or whenever needed, feedback to the vessel needs to be provided saying, dear captain, please alter the route. Next, please. Now, for sure, all these information are also relevant, not only for, let's say, is making sure that the vessel navigates in a safe and timely, efficient manner, but in the same way, considering other elements, such as the technical or the environmental compliance. And that said, that the centralized unit, and in this case, it's the S-Suite, needs to also provide information to the shore-based team, either on the commercial side of things, or on the technical side of things, or on the environmental side of things. An easy example on this is, and this is what we see very often, is that if a vessel, for instance, sails, the standard bike carrier sails with 12 knots and he's steaming at 30–40% MCR. That typically generates enough heat that the boiler, the exhaust gas boiler, can be turned out, can be shut off. But very often, because of existing habits, because of whatever reasons, we see that the boiler is still running. So that means an increased fuel consumption. And that element, next please, when it comes to technical information where eventual or where potential fuel is left behind, needs to then also be fed back to the vessel and advising, in this example, the chief engineer, dear chief, there's a good chance that you can shut off the boiler because you don't need it. And last but not least, next please. All these information then need to be made available to the shore teams. And by default, I'm saying teams because there's not the single stakeholder sitting ashore. There are many various stakeholders: operations team, fleet team, technical team, anyone you can think of. They might be in the need of seeing a report. They might be in the need of seeing a day-to-day analysis. They might be in need to see whatever. So having everything centrally controlled by, in this case, the S-Suite, enables that an entire shipping organization can increase the effectiveness of the day-to-day workflow. Next, please. In that example, my apologies for that bad resolution, as it's very hard to read. But what I'm now trying to go for is to dive a bit more into detail. What are the single verticals, the single elements, the fleet performance part, the route advisory part, and the planning and navigation part stand for, and how does it work for? So please click on the top green box, please. Thank you. So one element of the S-Suite when we speak about the fleet the performance part is the SHIPPINGinsite. The SHIPPINGinsite is a modular approach to commercial, technical, and environmental performance, bundling all of these three in one. Next, please. The commercial part, that's in the end all about making joint decision in terms of time and fuel. So in the end, that's the financial implication. Next, please. The technical part is more focusing on the asset. So how are the different components, how are the different consumers cooperating again towards each other? How is the hull degrading? What can be done to further increase the efficiency on either the fuel side of things or the maintenance cycles, so that in the end, one can identify further cost-saving measures? And last but not least, next please, the environmental compliance. This is to make sure that whatever is coming up when it comes to regulatory schemes can be met and fulfilled and reported from the same source with ideally no additional efforts. Next, please. Now, that itself, and this is still common, I would say, across the industry, is that all of these services are in the majority of the applications self-services. That said, there are a lot of solutions out in the world where shipping companies can subscribe to, and they get good ideas, they get good dashboards, they get good reports, etc., but it's still a self-service. So a superintendent, a fleet manager, an operator, they have to go in on a day-by-day basis. They need to spend time to get trained, and they need to focus on by themselves what is relevant to them. Now, in order to tackle this, we have actually established a performance center, and there are marine ex-captains, ex-chief engineers working. And on a day-to-day basis, these colleagues will then cooperate with the shipping company as to bring back critical insights and key information into a customer's world. Again, customized so that only those informations are shared with stakeholders which are relevant. Not more, not less. Next, please. Next, please. So in order to keep the time, I'm actually shortcutting a bit this one, but the commercial aspect, in essence, aims actually to maximize the time charter equivalent. There are a lot of pros and cons around this, and I guess John knows much more than I do about that Soleil aspect. But what we try is not only to provide a routing service, actually advising a ship, please sail this way because the storm is coming up and you should better alter the route. No, we actually try to turn the picture around and say, but well, what is relevant from an operator's, from a charter's perspective? And that's the time charter equivalent. So from our perspective, we aim to maximize the time charter equivalent to make sure that the financial result in the end, or the financial return upon each voyage, is maximized. Next, please. Next, please. All right, the technical part. As said, we are not focusing only on one aspect only. We try to integrate the entire landscape. Next, please. And we try this to transform data into actionable items. That sounds easy, but in the most of the cases and in reality, unfortunately, is not. And why is it not easy? Well, for the reasons we try to explain above, and then for the challenges we try to outline before, because very often the data streams, they are fragmented. They are in different landscapes, they are in different softwares. To bring the different data streams needed to come up with actionable items together, that's something we support, and it's named here that no hardware is required. That means we work with the existing data and with the existing data streams. Next, please. And next, please. So what we try in that context, as I said, we try to cover, let's say, the holistic performance picture. So it's not that we say, okay, we focus only on the vessel performance or on the engine performance or on single modules. We can cover all, in this case, 4 main categories, which is the fuel quality, the engine performance, the hull and propeller performance, and the vessel performance. So in essence, in a very example, we can support a shipping company and advise them whether the calorific value of a fuel which is either burned in Houston, in Rotterdam, or in Singapore has an effect, either positive or a negative effect on the overall vessel performance. Next, please. Well, and last but not least, as we just mentioned before, the environmental compliance. Next, please. There we are aiming for sure to enable a shipping company to have a trouble-free reporting. Now, the name reporting in this context can be a bit misleading. One can understand that reporting means, okay, I have to report data. Yes, that's true. But it can also mean reporting means how can I get the EU MRV report out of the system which is needed to be uploaded into the THETIS database? How can I how can I download the DCS report to share with the RO for verification? So in that context, reporting means pretty much everything from ship down the entire line to shore, whatever is needed to get data collected, having them processed, and in the end, populate a report, no matter how this report in the end will look like. Next, please. Well, and last but not least, as mentioned before, the performance center. Next, please. And 3 more times next. Oh, one too much, my bad. Excellent. So what do we have in the Performance Center? For sure, we can offer a day-to-day alert service. There, the people are on a daily basis checking the incoming data and advise back to a shipping company whether a vessel performed within or out with certain parameters, whereas these parameters are mutually agreed upon with the shipping company and can be highly customized towards every unique setting. But in addition to this, for sure, we can offer a regular report indicating saving potentials, saying you have left over the last reporting period X amount of tons behind, or you improved your efficiency by 5% compared to the last reference period. Well, and obvious ad hoc investigations, meaning if there is an immediate problem which needs immediately to be solved, then the colleagues from the Performance Center can help as well. All right, next please. Now that's been the Performance Center. What else do we have? For sure, we have the planning and navigation part. So please click on the blue box. Excellent, thank you. So the S-Planner, planning and navigation. Why is this integrated into the S-Suite? Well, as outlined before, that aims about integrating the voyage planning, the route optimization, and the charts and publications management into one solution. Next, please. The challenge is addressed. I mean, fuel efficiency, for sure, that ties into the route planning part. I think this is obvious. When you plan a route in a smart and effective way, you can actually save quite a lot of fuel. There is a ballpark figure flying around saying that for every $1 you invest in route optimization, at a minimum $8 you get in return. So I think that's quite an impressive number these days, where interest rates are rather on the low side. Where can you get 800% of a return on investment? Quite interesting, I would say. Nonetheless, it's also about the safety of the vessel crew and the cargo, in a way that in order to plan a route in an effective manner, both sides need to see the same reality. Same reality means the same chart status. What are the available charts on board to avoid any kind of the detentions on board? What are the same status when it comes to the weather, so that both the fleet manager, the operator, and the crew on board see the same weather information? So this is essential for effective planning of the voyage. I mentioned already the navigational compliance to make sure that whenever a vessel is preparing the voyage, it's not being detained by lacking of approved approved charts or available needed documentation. Sorry. Next, please. Well, once this is done, for sure, having everything within one centralized unit, for sure, that also helps to optimize the workflow. As said, it's about the charts with certain weather overlays, with MARPOL ECA warnings, piracy warnings. I mean, this is common these days. But in addition to have this also supplemented by the route optimization by means of BVS, by an e-log book by means of the SHIPPINGinsite log, and by the publication side of things, as planner publication. So having all in one actually increases the workflow and hence increases the efficiency on board. Next, please. All right, so that has been the planning part side of things. And now last but not least, for sure, it's the route advisory part. Yes, please, click on the orange box. Now, why is S-routing integrated into the S-Suite? Well, I think this is also obvious, as I tried to outline before. It is needed to improve the communication between ship and shore, to ensure, as is named here, safety of crew, vessel, and cargo, while in parallel optimizing the efficiency in terms of time and fuel. Typically, these two elements, or not typically, but very often, these two elements are disconnected. Either you are focusing on the one side or you're focusing on the other side. But we are aiming to bring all these elements together into one. Next, please. So what are the challenges addressed? First of all, it's about optimal vessel routing. That means find the most optimal route for the vessel and cargo. That said, optimal route is very case specific. So an optimal route can mean that you can either go the fastest way, you can go ramp line. Optimal route can also mean, because you have, I don't know, you might have wave sensitive cargo, that you need to find a way where the wave height is not exceeding 2 meters or so. So that said, there is not that optimal route. Optimal route is always case specific, hence a number of parameters need to be considered to provide the optimum route. Once you have arrived, for sure, you also want to know what does it mean in terms of dollar. So quantifying the ROI of a voyage is also of essence to make sure whether the investments you made was a good investment. So that again happens on the back of a number of parameters, whereas those parameters are again case specific to make sure that every customer specific needs and requirements are addressed. Safety of crew and vessel and cargo, I think this is also obvious. I mean, when we speak about safety at sea, safety of cargo, safety of the crew at sea, then for sure it's mainly about wind and wave heights. So to make sure that certain limits, certain thresholds are not exceeded while the vessel is en route, as well as to give the captain an advice as to when he might better change or alter the route because of changing weather parameters. Voyage performance report, that's in the end of voyage report, or to bring back the information how a vessel has performed along a voyage, not from an ROI perspective, was mainly against, let's say, the charter party descriptions as to did the vessels meet the criteria or not. And last but not least, this is then supported by a 24/7 hotline of experts. And I think that hotline, these availability and access to expert is also critical, because these days computers, machine learning algorithms, etc., they can help quite a lot, but the human judgment is still critical and important these days to make sure that whatever is analyzed, whatever is advised is done to the most optimum. Next, please. So the routing services, they can be scaled, as you can see here, in 4 different service levels. Next, please. We have the classic routing, which is actually advising on a route from pretty much port A to port B. Next, please. The voyage optimization then for sure goes down into minimizing fuel consumption, but as well keeping an eye on an ETA, whereas that ETA can for sure change as it happens, or any operational parameters. Next, please. RTA service, route recommendation and monitoring, and this is then to be optimized to achieve the optimum required time of arrival with the minimum fuel costs. And last but not least, for all these companies, next please. For all companies who say, well, this is a bit too much, for sure, then only a voyage report can be compiled as to make sure that the elements of relevance are addressed in that report. Next, please. Yeah, as said, what we deliver from that routing team is a 24/7 hotline with an experienced route analyst. And I think that we can be actually quite proud of that. We have a number of them with more than 30 years of experience, which in the end gives the confidence back to the customers, to the shipping organizations, that whatever comes back as a route advice, as an optimization proposal, is not something where one had done a bit of guesswork. It's a solid, it's a robust advice from experienced route analysts. Next, please. Yeah. So there we are again. It's been 35 minutes. I think we are well in time. As I said, we tried to have it done in 30 to 45 minutes. That is the S-Suite. Next, please. With the S-Suite, actually, as I said, we are aiming to connect, to better connect the maritime industry. And I think here we have quite an interesting case from a shipping company, Ottville, where we are a long-term partnership with. And I think it's interesting that over a period of about 10 years, we in the end managed to realize savings of 18 million US dollars. I think that's quite an impressive number. And that worked because we managed to bring the information across to the shipping company in a customized manner so that, well, 48,000 tons in emission could have been saved, translating into $80 million. All right, now John and I are open for questions. Thank you so far. Are there any? All right. I do not know if the audience has used the chat function. Unfortunately, we cannot see this.
Doesn't look like any questions, Tobias.
Doesn't look like. Well, then either we explain what the S-Suite is about so much in detail that everyone is well understood what it is, or it was just well, anyhow, we are available in the virtual exhibition hall, so you can find our StormGeo booth over there. Please feel free to reach out, to contact us, get into a dialogue, and learn more how the S-Suite can help you to increase and maximize your operational efficiency. All right. In that aspect, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of the day, the other presentations. And yeah, it was great opportunity for John and myself. And we hope to see you at our booth. Thank you.
Thanks, Tobias.
That was very interesting. I offer them a challenge for next year, though, and that is to develop this into artificial intelligence so that all of that can direct the ship by itself. Thank you very much, Tobias and John. That was a fantastic introduction to the S-Suite and collaboration hosted by StormGeo. I want to remind everybody that we've got another workshop on the hour coming up not too far from now. And I also want to remind everybody that at 6 o'clock tonight, we'll have the comedy hour. Thank you very much and talk to you later.